Hi, hi. It's we speak in English, huh? Or you
Yes,
prefer? Yes. Okay.
yes, we speak English.
Very good. I'm very happy to uh, enter in dialogue with you, and we will at all speak 1 hour or hour a half, not only with you but with Ralitza Debra Yua, Mugandi Mrikta from Kenya, and Sunse Stassen from South Africa. So Africa will be the center of our topic uh, this hour. And for me also, I think if we speak about the future, it's impossible to don't speak about Africa. Also because Africa will come to be one of the, from the population, one of the very important part of the world, but also because, yeah, it's one of the continent of the future. You are member of the World Design Organization. You
Sure.
teach in you teach and research in KNUST in Ghana
Yes,
and in JPUT in South Africa.
yes.
And I just know one of your book, la deuxième vie des objets, the second life of the object.
Yes, yes.
And I think this could be a little bit the start of our discussion. Uh, how can we make importance of this second, third, and fourth life of objects and of yeah, in the way of pollution, also in the way of how can we work better in this ecological element, to say we have something who don't are directly in buy and then broke and then go away. I let
Yeah.
you speak a little bit.
Thank you so much. That was really, really an incredible introduction and a welcoming message. I really enjoyed it. And yes, talking about the second life cycle of objects and reuse and looking back and finding it all right behind us. It's actually inspired by where I'm coming from on the continent, where you normally find that you have to do so much with very little. And it's not really that you need so much to be able to do what you really need to do, because sometimes the very things we find within our communities are actually very, very useful that we can turn around to make useful objects or even systems in which we can use to, improve livelihood where we come from. So that is quite a very nice way to come in. And we call that style of doing things what we call the sankofa. That
But
is going back and getting
I,
it.
I I think it's interesting as designer also as challenge to say some object has this possibility of second life and other object don't have it. So
Yes,
when you make the conception of an object, you have also to think at this afterlife,
yes,
not in
yes.
only in the way of ecological. This has to be not too much in pollution, but also to say there are possibilities to work with this future.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's very true. So, as much as possible, we are trying so much that even at the start of design processes, we make students or people involved realize that we should think about the second life of the object. So it is not really about pretty things, but we should look at all of these elements because very much as part of our culture, we always naturally will find um, ways of reusing things to make other objects. So, for example, children around my area in my community may not be able to buy the expensive toys or Legos or whatever you find, but for some reason, as they play, they are able to turn maybe packaging boxes to their own toys and even tin objects. They can make them into cars and other interesting objects that speaks of their stories. And we sometimes use these objects in, for example, if you want to do animation production, you put them in, then they can actually see how something that was actually had no life can actually have real life. And you can even make toys like robots out of it, and it's so exciting. So just to really sensitize people to really know that it's not always that, like I said, that it has to be so sophisticated, but it can really be simple. And what COVID has also taught us right now that we don't, I mean, in terms of the new normal, we don't really need all the fancy things, but the basic things that one needs to live is very important. So that really becomes essential in
I,
the design of what we do. Thank you. So
I,
over to you.
I introduce Vera in the discussion.
Yeah. Hi. Hi. Nice to see you.
What I will now a little bit go to the goal we have in this discussion of 24 hours. Also, if I know that Africa had was not so affected from the COVID as other continent, and that's beautiful for you. It's, I think this mean also your capacity to go over any pandemics because you have a knowledge on it is is also I will think with you a little bit what because I think there are other elements who come now and who will be very more destructive as a pandemic at all is economical dimensions. And I will think a little bit with you about this, this future who will come in the next years, and then a future a little bit in a longer term, and what design can do on these elements.
Sure. Okay. Sure. So you, if I get you correctly, you like me to highlight a bit on the short term, mid term, and long term of what design can do, and the scenarios that we find ourselves. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sorry,
So
my
I
English
find that
is not so perfect. So I do
yeah,
my best.
it doesn't matter. You are doing so well.
Thanks.
You are doing so well. So I think that design really, 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 really has a powerful role to play in this process because now we know that with design, we can now relook at our systems in our communities again and look at how we can redesign these systems in a way that it will focus very much on collaboration and we working together, looking at very much of bottom-up approaches that work so that it will be very, very sustainable because when we find ourselves in such situations and we don't have any plans available, then it's very easy for us to be shaken. But if we use design to relook at our systems again, for example, issues around providing healthcare in a more sustainable way, for example, in a very local point of view, not really very much of the big government level, because there are really areas where healthcare cannot really reach so much. But if we look at it from the, let's say, the global issues are there. So global, country, community, and then the person. So if we design the systems in that way, focusing on all these pillars, then we would have touched on every area. So before there is any disruption, everybody in a way would be prepared so that we are not affected in any way. And then now, with whatever we have learned now, we have to re-look into the future and reimagine our future. And like you used the last time, we have to redesign.
So future. So,
Yes, the future. Yeah, we have to redesign the future, learning from the past of what has really happened now. But it will only be possible through design, where we make the main actors in the system take over the processes of what works. And then we can shape it so that we get the structures very well in the ground. And then if there is anything, we will not be shaken, we can be resilient. Okay, so for example, some of the things here, like you mentioned that like in Africa, for example, we're able to manage. I find that when it comes to the basic needs like food, water, and all of that, if for my region, for example, is a bread basket of the country, and once you get your basic food, you can actually be indoors as much as you can. So if for issues around, let's say, farming, we are co-producing food, we are making sure that all those systems are in place, and we are not looking at food going waste and all of that. There is so much in store from the local point of view. Then when these things are happening, the basic needs of human beings are available. So people can actually survive and live. And how do we do that? We can do that through design. And then in the midterm, for example, we can now bring in things around technology to become the enabler. It's not necessarily the solution, but it becomes the enabler through which some of the key activities can be made available to the others. So if it's in healthcare, you can use technology, for example, to provide healthcare services to people and in remote areas in a way that you can maybe measure certain things. So it's actually helping in mitigating the situation. And if we are using things like the drone technology to also drop, let's say, blood samples and food supplies to remote areas where we cannot travel, we are using technology as an enabler. So not necessarily the solution, but it's just enabling it. Then that, going forward to the to the long term, where we'll be in our new normal, all that we've learned now can help us to redesign our future when we are more prepared and can be very resilient in any situation that shakes our foundation. Yes. So that is what I can say. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting because I like so much that you are saying redesign the future. So that means that somebody else maybe designed already the future and you are redesigning it. So it's a kind of act of reappropriation. And in the same time, it's a kind of you projecting to the future and you going back already in the future, which it's a time concept which is great. And I think this already. I think we have so much to learn. And as you are a so young continent, I think part of the struggle which is in this part of the world is because who's defining and who are in positions in universities and so on, is us, an old generation. So it's also the struggle of our concepts which we are facing in this moment. And it's interesting how, when we already heard our colleagues from the South African context, which is also a young continent. So it's interesting how to make this bridge about these young spirits to find these ideas. And what for me is interesting, how do you connect these ideas to teaching or to transmitting, and how you are involving this even younger generation?
Okay, so you would like me to touch on how we are integrating this concept for younger generation and all of that. Okay, right. So very much as part of the teaching and learning processes, we all know that in the beginning it was very much of we projecting, designing for the planet and sustainability and all that, and we didn't even realize that it was almost coming. A situation was coming to reconfirm some of these things. So when the COVID happened, then suddenly the students began to realize that most of the things where we were talking about environment, our planet, and our, let's say, food design and all of that is becoming very real now. So what we did in this, let's say, midterm, as part of our teaching and learning processes, we re-echoed what was happening. And then we tried to connect students and other educators across of different countries. For example, we had a group of students from Ghana and then that from South Africa to start conversing around what is happening, so that they can share ideas and they can also tell their stories about what is happening on their side and what is also happening here. And then in that process, they all shared their 1-minute stories about how they are staying resilient in this COVID times and what they have learned in the COVID crisis, and what the issues around sustainability, for example, is becoming real to them. So this actually, the situation re-emphasized the need for us to relook at our situations again. And it really made it realistic for them to look at how we can renegotiate what is happening around us, so that it's not far from what is happening globally. So we say that away is a place. We have a phrase, we say away is a place. You think that there's something happening so far away, but it can also be happening right where you are, which is the place in which you are. So there's no out there and in here. We are all connected in the global village. So if you do something here, it can have an impact on the other side. So some of these concepts we carry through the curriculum in the classes and all of that. And then during the COVID situation in the midterm, we were of course all at home and all online. So then we worked on the collaborative city, looking at how we can become resilient in this time, and looking into our past, which we call in our local language Sankofa, and see what we can relearn from there to inform how we are redesigning our future. So this is how we made it so practical. So I have those stories. I don't know if it will be useful. They are happy to share them. Yeah. Yes.
How can I imagine the community of designer in Ghana?
Okay. You mean the committee of
The
designers in
community,
Ghana?
the communities. How many? How are you connected with architecture? Are you connected with other? Because in architecture you have some very famous persons in Ghana.
Yes, we do. We have a lot of design associations, okay? So we work together. And what we try to do is to bring all the smaller organizations together as what we call Design Ghana. So Design Ghana becomes an organization, non-profit, which is a community of NGOs and other standalone industries that are working together with teachers and students. So when we have a call, we work through that. Then everybody can work together. And then secondly, Design Ghana also becomes part of the Pan-African Design Institute in Africa. And of course, also in collaboration with Open Design, and then it goes on and on. So we don't only network within our local communities, but we also network outside our countries with other organizations. So yes, so that is how it works. But we are very small, and so we are trying to work hard, and eventually, as we move forward towards redesigning our futures, we can relearn from what is happening in our current situation to inform the future and really see how powerful design is and how design can be used to do many things, not only pretty things, but systems that work and in which the products or services will operate to build a sustainable future and a better world in the spirit of Ubuntu. Yes. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure with yes again. It was so much
Yes. I
inspiring
can't
and
wait. I can't
powerful
wait.
statement. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Bye.
so much. I enjoyed it. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. You are in Kenya in the
Good.
moment?
No. Afrique du Sud.
No,
Afrique du
Cape
Sud.
Town.
Because
Okay.
Burundi is not there. Yeah,
Okay,
it's not
okay,
connected.
okay. Sorry, we confuse. Um,
I can in Kenya if you want me to be.
yes. Did you listen a little bit the discussions before? No.
Yes, I did listen to the previous session and also to Relitza.
Very good. So
You are the director of the Open Design Africa Festival.
That's correct.
I will be interesting. You start to explain a little bit what this to explain a little bit what this is.
Okay.
you understood? Yeah, we
They take me away my microphone, so I could.
So what we would like to invite you to describe a little bit from which viewpoint you are speaking today, and what you would like to impulse in our discussion about the actual situation in the context you are working, and what are maybe the central problems and the initiatives to deal with this situation. And this can be COVID, but also economically, ecological consequences. So the relevance of COVID is different in different contexts. So this is just a kind of mark point.
Okay, good. No problem.
Thank you.
When are we? Oh, am I going now?
We hear you, so we are curious what you want to take, what position you want to take.
Oh, okay. So I would like to talk about the Open Design Africa Festival as a platform to put great talent and innovation that is adding value to the to quality of life on a world stage. We also go in from an angle where we look at repositioning a new narrative for design. That it's more about adding to quality of life. So the kind of designs that we are focusing on is more focused on social change, social innovation, social entrepreneurship. And it's about developing pride and value in Africa, challenging the perception that the global world has about Africa. And that, of course, has a huge impact on how Africans see themselves as well. So we really work, the reason for the existence of open design is to look at how can we create a platform that is completely inclusive and accessible by even people from marginalized communities so that we can affect systemic change. And we also, I listened a little to Relitza as one of our ambassadors in Ghana. And we're very big on positioning ourselves with inspiring people from all over the world, as well as in Africa, to create small actions of change, which together is going to be massive. So we're not just about the big change, but also about the small change. And I think that's one thing that COVID has taught us, how everything is connected.
Uh-huh. So
when I read your biography, I see you make the creation of spaces for people of diverse ages, races, classes, and background to bring it in interaction. This is a definition of public space at all.
Yes, so we're really mindful about when we create experiences for the festival. We're very mindful that people have different interests, of course, that attracts them. For instance, you might be interested in a conference, but I find it very boring. So I might react better to a movie, for instance, or to a hands-on experience. So because we've got three pillars, which is education, innovation, and building stronger communities together, when we put a festival like that together, we make sure that we have different kinds of experiences that still attract quite a broad audience to come, but still learn about the value and the impact of creativity across different sectors. It's about working with the greater ecosystem and the entire value chain instead of just only focusing on the creative industries, which brings me back to that systemic change that we are creating. So, for instance, if I can come back to the value aspect about creating value just with one individual, we will, for instance, go and look for change makers in marginalized communities, in communities that's really poor, that's creating an incredible impact. And we put them on the stage with quite well-known figures. That in itself creates that individual value. It creates that ripple effect, that systemic change that we're looking for, because it impacts on his direct family, on his community, and it also brings his community into our space, where we then bring people from diverse communities together into one experience. And so we learn to be together. It's also then about social cohesion, about designing social cohesion, because I think often these experiences are created and there's a very big part of society that's excluded. And how can we create change on the scale that's needed if we continue to exclude the masses? And in Africa, of course, the masses is people of poverty. So we make, what we do is we're very conscious about how we create everything that we do so that they feel the welcome, that they feel valued, that they feel they also have the right to participate in these important conversations.
In Europa, in Occident, in the moment many persons say nothing will be same after and as before of this pandemic. What is the feeling in South Africa in the moment? I suppose you have so many other crises before that this point probably has not the same importance, or not. I'm curious about this.
I mean, we were, of course, I think the whole world was very concerned about Africa and how we're going to deal with this crisis. But I think what's been proven, not just in South Africa, but in Africa in general, is that we've got a very strong resilience. We've dealt with Ebola, we've dealt with HIV and AIDS. And even although I think even ourselves we're looking at, we don't have the sophisticated healthcare structures in place, we do have some form of a structure in place that has brought us through these other crises. And I think we've shown great resilience, and also communities across different borders have really pulled together to start helping each other. So that's been quite amazing to see happening.
And what you said before, the valorization of actors who are normally excluded, is this how to say? Is this a valorization of their knowledge, and is this also a kind of meeting between the two knowledge systems, which the former included are sharing with those excluded? So is this a way to bring them on stage, but is this also a way to go in the context where the people are coming from and to find their knowledge?
It has a lot to do with acknowledging that people have value. I think you can achieve a lot of change when people feel valued. Mm-hmm. That's the very first beginning of anything. You cannot, I personally don't believe that you can create the kind of change that's sustainable and that really has significance and meaning to add if you don't start at the beginning and actually value people. And by inviting and making them feel that they are welcome to be part of the conversation, we all have life experience to add to a conversation. It really makes people feel that they're valued. And I think that changes mindsets, and it creates new aspirations for a different kind of future when people feel included.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have also experience on this domain, and we often see there need many time to offer again imagination, to offer this possibility of desire, to offer this possibility to go out of the convention of what happened in the social situation, but more on the power. So I think this is a very important part of design, to have this patience, to have this time, to give this possibility of a listening of this kind of persons, and to respect.
No, that is why. Yes, that is why I believe that to integrate STEAM education from early childhood development all the way through the education system is extremely valuable and crucial, because it develops the human skills that we need to form that symbiotic relationship with the machine. Yeah. And only if we have that in complete balance will we be able to actually thrive in the future.
It's interesting that because we have touched it, that the crisis in the other hemisphere in this moment is also a generational crisis, so that the knowledge of those who defined before, and which was now is more an older generation, is now the crisis is also a model of thought. It's also the modern system which is in crisis, and maybe also the neoliberal system. But the question is, what I think very interesting, you are touching the question of transgenerational communication in a different way. So how do you see this way to create maybe a culture of listening already to the questions of the other over generations? So to say that the young has something to contribute to the concept of the old, and the young can profit from the knowledge and the experience of the older generation. How you are creating this intergenerational communication?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we as a human race, first of all, we have the most important design brief to write in the history of humanity now. And that is to design, how do we design this new world, this world we are proud to live, work, and play in. And every generation, everyone that's part of different generations are part of that greater ecosystem and value chain. And that again, when we start looking at writing this design brief for this new world we want to create, everyone has a very important role to play. We've really successfully, I believe, engineered a very destructive world. But we also have the power to design and note that I said engineered, and then to design a world that is very different to the destructive one we've designed before. And creativity has a massive and a very crucial role to play in there. If we look at the fourth industrial revolution conversation, so many people interpret that to be a focus on technology and technical skills. But the difference between the fourth industrial revolution and everything that happened before is to have that key balance between focusing on and investing in humanity, human skills, and technology. And those human skills and qualities we need to thrive in the future to form that symbiotic relationship can only be developed through creative education. So when it comes to intergenerational, it is really about if we can manage to design this new world and we can start at early childhood development and make sure that we integrate STEM education, I think we will see a massive big change in society already in the next 5 to 10 years. And to keep the older generation part of learning from our mistakes, learning from history, is a very key part of that conversation. So what we do also at the Open Design Africa Festival is we have a part of our festival called the Family Makers Day. And that is where we bring in different generations, where families and friends and people from different generations can also come together and make and create together.
So in a discussion before, we take the goal of self-determination as probably a goal for the citizen of the world in the future. This capacity to think the world and to decide how could be his position inside of the system. This has surely to do with education, but how can we bring out this contradiction in between technologies who at all take us, or bring us the self-determination more little, and this goal to say you have to decide, you have to think, you have to be part of, you have to construct with.
How do we? I didn't understand your question. Can you repeat that?
Vera will explain it.
I think if I would translate it, I would say it's about self-command and self-activation instead of self-determination in a way of reducing and to staying in the form which has been already designed. So how can we overcome? And this was interesting in the interview with our colleague from Ghana, that she said we have to redesign our future, which means that maybe the future is already designed to some extent. And how can we redesign this? And which role precisely the citizens can play in this redesign?
Yeah, we need to create more inclusive and accessible platforms. There's a lot of platforms out there that's just simply not accessible. And if we look at kind of jumping that gap, we need to create platforms that's accessible to people from different parts of our society. We need to start playing a much bigger role to impact and to start working together with cities, with governments. From, like I said, early childhood development all the way through the education system, the integration of STEAM education, that's a great start into the future. But also looking at design education. In the past, we used to specialize in, for instance, universal design methodologies, sustainable design methodologies, but these things should be integrated into every design curriculum. There should not be a choice in how we design. At a tertiary level, we can put out great citizens, great designers tomorrow. But we also need to start looking at not just designing or developing them for that specific sector, but how do we develop a citizen, a balanced citizen that has these future soft skills that empowers them to make the correct decisions, that empowers them to understand how to make various different parts of society as part of decision making, so that any projects that they approach can add significance and meaning on a far greater scale. So it's really, I think, you have to interject on various different levels, from education, tertiary education, and government level, as well as in the private sector.
Thank you so much. That's a good point to continue and to take with us. Thank you so much. And I think we will come back to several points because it's very important, I think, the action which you are providing us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Good night.
Good night. Jetzt ist es der... Ah, super. D'accord.
Bonsoir Caroline.
Bonsoir Philippe. Je te vois pas.
Ça marche le son?
Si je le vois pas, c'est pas grave.
Non, c'est moi qui...
D'accord. Bonsoir Philippe. Alors, en quelques mots pour te présenter, tu es commissaire de l'exposition avec Ludovic et Delcorte, la manufacture Labor of Love, à la gare Saint-Sauveur, à Lille. Est-ce que tu peux dire un petit mot sur l'exposition avant de nous parler d'un des designers, en particulier Bas Timmer, autour du shelter suit?
Oui.
Alors, de quoi il s'agit de cette exposition?
J'y vais?
Oui, on t'écoute.
On t'écoute, on t'entend.
OK. Donc, j'ai partagé mon écran. Et comme Caroline vous disait, je vais juste vous expliquer un peu sur le concept de notre exposition qui s'appelle la manufacture, a Labor of Love, que j'ai organisée ensemble avec Lille Delcorte. Ça va continuer à la gare Saint-Sauveur jusqu'au 8 novembre. Donc, j'espère que pour ceux qui ne l'ont pas encore vu, qui vont avoir l'occasion de passer dans les semaines prochaines. Dans l'exposition, il y a 12 thématiques qui reflètent les différentes tendances dans le design contemporain, surtout dans les matériaux et les processus. Et ce soir, je voulais juste partager un des 12 thèmes avec vous, qui est le design social, qui est le concept de créer une communauté. Quelque chose qui est de plus en plus important, comme vous avez dit juste avant mon intervention ce soir. Donc, je voulais partager avec vous quelques projets qui nous ont créé cette thématique. Et c'est quelque chose que nous avons ajouté en dernier, à la fin de l'organisation de cette sélection. Donc, un projet, c'est un Hollandais qui s'appelle Roland Peter Smith, qui veut travailler avec des gens qui sont handicapés. Donc, il a créé des machines, des systèmes de tissage qui sont beaucoup plus simples pour les gens qui ont des problèmes pour les utiliser à faire des textiles. C'est un projet pour créer des plaids qui utilisent des gauges de fil beaucoup plus gros, beaucoup plus faciles à manipuler, avec un système de tissage beaucoup plus simple. Donc ça, c'est le résultat. Et dans l'exposition, vous allez pouvoir découvrir quelques plaids qui sont vendus maintenant dans le monde entier. Un autre projet qu'on adore beaucoup, c'est Sociolabel. C'est une organisation de plusieurs designers, un collectif, qui créent des produits qui sont ensuite faits par des artisans qui sont aussi handicapés. Et c'est encore une fois un système simple pour qu'ils soient impliqués dans le processus, impliqués aussi dans la société et inclus. Donc ici, c'est une collection de céramique où les gens sont libres à choisir le placement des motifs avant qu'ils soient finalisés. Un autre projet que vous allez découvrir dans les vitrines de ce thème dans l'exposition, c'est le Human Trace, qui est un projet en Pologne où deux académiques ont trouvé un système pour montrer l'importance du fait main dans l'industriel. Et donc ici, dans une des usines les plus grandes de la porcelaine en Pologne, ils ont invité les ouvriers et les travailleurs d'utiliser des gants spécifiques avec un pigment de cobalt qui va laisser les traces de doigts pour chaque fois que les objets en porcelaine sont touchés pendant la manufacture, pendant le processus de les fabriquer. Et donc ici, en fait, quand on travaille la porcelaine, on ne se rend pas compte, mais il y a plusieurs personnes qui doivent intervenir. Et c'est un peu comme les pâtes de pizza, on le balance dans l'air, on le touche à plusieurs. Par exemple, dans une assiette, on a peut-être 9 ou 10 personnes qui vont intervenir pour le toucher, pour terminer. Donc ici, on voit déjà la finition bleue, qui est une espèce de bleu Delft, un nouveau bleu Delft, où on voit exactement l'emplacement des doigts pour montrer qu'il y a toujours une présence de l'être humain, même dans un produit industriel. Et comme a introduit Caroline,
je pense qu'il faut que tu fasses circuler tes slides, parce qu'on est bloqué encore sur la première slide.
Ah, ça c'est embêtant. Parce que là, j'ai changé.
Voilà. Ouais, c'est mieux.
Et là, vous le voyez?
Oui.
Oui.
Et si je change, vous le voyez changer?
Pour l'instant, non.
Ah. C'est Shelter Suit, là.
Oui, donc ça veut dire que tout ce que je viens d'expliquer n'était pas vu.
Était abstrait.
On peut quand même imaginer avec tes mots, mais je pense que c'est encore plus impressionnant en le voyant.
Ah oui. Et si je vais juste manipuler 2 secondes.
Mais je pense que ce qu'on peut faire est quand même mettre ces images sur ou une partie ou une sélection sur la page Facebook. Et peut-être tu peux nous encore raconter un peu le rôle que ce projet joue ici pour qu'on peut partager dans nos discussions qu'on a eues ici. Qu'est-ce que cette prise de position avec cette exposition ou qu'est-ce que tu as voulu?
Maintenant, si j'utilise un PDF, est-ce que vous voyez l'image?
On voit le premier slide pour l'instant.
Et là, ça change?
Non.
Ça ne change pas non plus?
Non.
Je pense vraiment que ça serait peut-être... Parce
okay. Donc, on va
là, on
choisir...
en est au deuxième.
Oui, mais c'est pas très... On est en train de discuter des objets de design, donc on a besoin de les voir. C'est pas une présentation financière.
Je pense qu'on a demain, on a encore un moment de parler avec Ledwige, si c'est prévu. Normalement, ça va pas se faire. D'accord. Peut-être, est-ce que ça serait possible de reprendre demain sur ce créneau à 12
Donc
heures.
là, vous voyez une image.
Oui, le problème est, on a ces 15 minutes pour chaque intervention. Et je pense qu'il est...
Si je peux continuer, on va peut-être le faire dans 4 minutes.
D'accord.
Donc, demain, je pense qu'il n'y a pas d'intervention de Mme Edelcourt, donc je pense que ça, c'est une erreur. Mais je vais vous expliquer le projet de Bastimer, qui est une focus de cette thématique sociaux. Bastimer était un étudiant de mode, il a fait des études dans la mode, mais il a décidé très tôt de ne pas vouloir travailler dans l'industrie de la mode. Et il a trouvé une astuce pour aider les gens autour de lui. Et il a commencé en créant un organisme qui s'appelle Shelter Suit. Donc ça, c'est quelque chose que vous allez aussi découvrir dans l'exposition. Et c'est en fait un projet où il accepte des dons de tissus de plusieurs industries, surtout l'industrie de construction de tentes et aussi le recyclage d'autres tissus synthétiques de la mode. Et en fait, il crée une espèce de manteau qui fait aussi sac de couchage. Et c'est quelque chose qui donne...
Ça, on l'a vu. Oui, pardon.
Voilà. Donc, c'est quelque chose qui est donné pour commencer aux Pays-Bas, d'où Bastimer vient. Mais il a aussi créé des petits ateliers, des petites usines de fabrication dans d'autres pays. Par exemple, à Detroit aux États-Unis, ou à Austin au Texas, et maintenant à New York. Et surtout à Cape Town, où il travaille avec la communauté de design là-bas. Donc, l'idée de base, c'est de donner le maximum de shelter suit gratuit, bien sûr, aux sans-abri dans le monde entier. Il veut aussi inspirer d'autres designers à faire la même chose. Et c'est justement en collaboration avec l'organisation de Lille 2020 et le World Design Capital qu'on a fondé un projet de faire des dons sur le site de sheltersuit.org qui peut se faire sur la page de Facebook de Lille 2020 ou aussi sur le site sheltersuit.org. Et justement, aujourd'hui, la magazine The Time a annoncé que Bastimer est un des nouveaux voix ou nouvelles générations de leaders dans le monde entier, pas juste dans le design, mais dans le monde entier. Donc ça, c'est un grand honneur. Et justement, on voulait parler de ce projet aujourd'hui parce que c'est la journée internationale des sans-abri. Donc, c'est vraiment l'occasion de mettre en valeur l'importance de cette situation sociale qui n'est pas forcément juste un problème pour eux, mais un problème pour toute la société. Et donc, on espère que tout le monde à Lille qui va passer va utiliser les codes QR ou qui vont aller sur le site de sheltersuit.org pour faire un petit don. Ça peut être 2 €, 8 € ou plus, mais juste pour vous donner une idée, le coût de fabrication d'un shelter suit est que de 50 €. Donc, en donnant même 50 €, en trouvant 50, on peut vérifier qu'une personne cet hiver va pas mourir dans la neige de l'hiver européenne.
Ouais, l'objectif de la levée de fonds, elle est bien de permettre aux sans-abri de la métropole de pouvoir avoir ces shelter suits. Ça n'ira pas dans un autre pays. C'est bien pour ça qu'on l'a inscrit dans le cadre de la Capitale Mondiale.
Je pense que c'est une initiative extrêmement importante parce que aussi aujourd'hui, et je pense qu'on va peut-être toucher demain, dans l'intervention de Capucine Legel et son section, cette communauté, on a parlé de lieux informels, etc., mais ce design que vous créez, c'est le design précisément de ceux qui sont des créateurs de chaque jour, de survivre, et cette collaboration entre les designers et l'expertise qui se met au service de cette clientèle qui ne peut pas donner une commande, mais c'est une commande qui est même dans notre société, comme vous avez dit. Et je pense que cette autocommande qu'un designer peut se donner, c'est existentiel pour notre discipline. Et je pense que c'est quelque chose qu'on aimerait bien partager et donner dans le monde. Et je suis sûre que ça, c'est quelque chose que vous pouvez aussi partager avec nos intervenants suivants, qui précisément essayent aussi de faire des collaborations et d'identifier ses besoins et faire un lien entre, dans ce cas-là, ces savoirs locaux et le design, qui valorise aussi avec sa position la situation et je pense que c'est ou la personne, et c'est profondément humain de développer quelque chose qui valorise la personne et aussi qui la fait apparaître autrement dans l'espace public. Donc, je vous remercie et j'espère, voilà, j'invite tout le monde, ceux qui sont sur place et ceux qui ne sont pas sur place, de regarder digitalement votre travail. Et je trouve aussi remarquable que ça peut trouver une place ici. Et qu'un festival comme ça est précisément le lieu qui permet ces développements.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Très bonne soirée, Philippe, et puis à bientôt.
Merci.
À bientôt.
À bientôt. Au revoir.
Donc, je te laisse transférer à nos amis.
Giulio.
Rudy, ça va?
Ça va?
Oui, ça va bien, merci. Je suis avec mes collègues, Fabiola, Patricia et Christy qui va arriver. J'espère qu'elle arrive. Et tout est bien. Vous êtes prêts pour faire la fête toute la nuit?
Nous sommes prêts pour faire une fête, fête du langage toute la nuit.
Oui. Alors, j'attends seulement que Christy arrive.
Oui. En attendant, peut-être, Giulio, on peut. Ah bon, d'accord. Donc, l'idée, c'est que tu commences avec ces 3 interviews comme on a prévu et qu'on fasse peut-être une 4e avec toi que nous reprendrons à la fin des 3. C'est possible?
Oui, bien sûr. Tout fait l'interview à moi.
Oui, c'est moi qui le fais.
Parfait.
Ouais.
Parfait.
Et moi, je pose aussi quelques questions.
Vera, tu es disponible. Tu as la carte rouge, tu peux entrer quand tu veux. Aussi dans la discussion, s'il vous plaît.
Ouais. Donc, Giulio, on vous laisse. On est là, hein. On est là, okay. Et on vous embêtera, mais pas trop.
Ok, ça va. Patricia, tu es là? Non?
Oui.
Non ti vedo più.
Bonjour, Patricia.
Bonjour, Rudy. Bonjour, Vera. Merci de votre invitation.
Okay. Good evening. I will cross to English because my guests are not French speakers, and I would like to introduce in this moment a group of friends. Let's start with Fabiola Bergamo. Fabiola Bergamo she is a Brazilian designer. She was studying in Italy many years. She was working in Italy, and after she decided to return to Brazil. And she's one of the most known experts in craft and community design, I will call. And she's working very actively in Brazil since the last 20 years. She's very young, by the way, but she's working for the last 20 years. And she has this strange sensibility to be able to talk with very important person. I remember her talking with ministers, and at the same time she's able to sleep in a hammock in the middle of the forest. This is something unique. And so is Paola. My second guest is Patrizia Scarzella. A lot of these. I don't know. I don't see her, but I believe that she's there. Patrizia, you there?
Yes,
Yes,
I'm
okay.
here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Patrizia Scarzella is another profile of person. She's an architect, designer, and journalist. She had, like the majority of us at the beginning, were concentrated to be famous designers, Milan, similar. And in the step by step, when we arrived to our age of maturity, she get cross to she get close to the close to social issues. So she began to work in different international projects. We were working together in some Middle East countries. Again, what is special from her position is that
Giulio, can you hear me?
yes.
Your voice is not clear. The
Okay,
sound.
I changed the microphone. Now it's better.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. This is a Chinese microphone, doesn't work. Anyway, so Patrizia have this special magic also, that she's at the same time someone who can do the things and can talk about, because she's at the same time a designer and journalist. And this is something special, because not all the designers like us, like me, is able to describe his work. There is normally a gap between design and describe what you do. And you are a kind of, you are shy to describe work. And finally, last but not least, they arrived, they are still watching, yeah, we are here. Cristi Arias and Sergio Guzman. Cristi is a extremely good textile designer, and Sergio is an architect. He's maybe the black sheep on this discussion, but they are calling us from Lima. As we see, we have an international parterre, Brazil, Milano, and Lima, and of course Lille. I was introducing Cristi. Cristi have another magic. It's at the same time a very, very social design engaged project in the community in the middle of the Andes, doing really, as we say, haciendo patria, doing, fighting for the country, for Peru, but at the same time, she's an artist. So this is another kind of profile that's different from the others. And Sergio, they are a couple, they look like. Sergio is an architect who became designer and returned to be an architect, right? To describe your life in a 2 words. And both together, they live together. They have 2 nice children together. And these are my guests for this evening. I know that the sound is not good, but I don't know how to do it, but I can. Because they are, I speak it very hard, very high. So for them, I have three questions. So I will run the question first, Fabiola, after Patrizia, enough to Christy and Sergio. The first question is developing community is the equivalent of fragile communities. There is a discussion on that because when the COVID-19 pandemic arrived to work, I saw that the most relaxed countries were in development. Our civilized countries, they were much more afraid, much more dramatic situation. And I never forget when I was here in March during the hard time of COVID-19 in Milano, that people from Haiti or people from Syria, they call me and they say, come on, Giulio, take a plane and come here. Here is safe. So I asked them, why is safe? And they told me, it's safe because here we have a lot of disease. COVID is another disease. We have a lot of disease. We have a lot of problems. We are stronger enough. We have unite, we sleep. Tomorrow, I don't know if a Russian bomb arrived to us, over us. So who cares about the situation? So my first question, and I love that Fabiola started, answer is, do you believe that the condition that we are in last developing countries are equivalent of a fragile community? Are the developing community really fragile or not? There is something strong, a strongness inside.
But can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What I see, like here in Brazil, that is really in emerging countries, communities, they have a really amazing way of deal with problems, a resilience that it's unbearable. So they can manage to find solutions, create solutions with what they have available. And I don't think really they are fragile. But what I saw is that the problem, what make the situation make them more fragile in the situation, or the money aspect, because these people they depend on the flow of people, and the lockdown avoid people and possible buyers to go through markets and streets and buy their things, and tourists. So they were in a very difficult situation because they don't have savings. So they sell today to eat tomorrow. So the thing itself was not the disease itself, but was the lockdown that prevent them to have their income. So that made them more fragile in the whole situation. But the disease itself, as you said, here we have dengue, chikungunya, and many others. So it's one more. It's one more problem for everybody, but the main problem was the lockdown and the social distancing. For Latin people is kind of crazy to be a part of friends and family, and everything was very hard to be not hugging everybody. We hug everybody, and this lack of physical approach was very hard on us, on everybody here, and especially communities. But they keep seeing each other and doing everything. So the most hard thing was the lack of market. One day to another, they lost all the market, all the buyers and everything. So it was really hard.
And Patricia, what do you think about?
I think that we have to redefine completely the concept of what is a fragile community. Before COVID, we used to think that people in other countries, what we define the poor countries like Africa or the East, were more fragile than us. We were feeling very strong with our technology, with our way of living, and so on. And instead, when the COVID, the pandemic that was totally unexpected arrived, we found ourselves very, very fragile because we were totally unprepared to face with it. And I think we have been lucky because at least in Europe, in USA, in many industrial countries, even if we had the lockdown, we had the food. It was easy to access to the food. We had electricity. We had internet. We were able to communicate with the world. And in that month, I've seen a wonderful movie that my advice is to watch it. You find it on the web. It's a Japanese movie called Survival Family. And I thought that, so we were lucky because the scenario could have been really worse, and it could be worse still. In this movie, there is in Tokyo, suddenly lack of electricity, and everything stopped. And then, the life became impossible. So we didn't face, luckily, with this situation, but we don't know. Maybe in the future, we are totally unprepared. And instead, in countries like Africa, many countries in Africa that have been affected by COVID, but not so much. And they don't know the reason why the COVID didn't spread so much. Maybe people, the age of people, there are a lot of young people. Here in Europe, there are a lot of old people, so weaker. There is less pollution, less industrialization. They don't know. There are studies and hypotheses about that. But I recently wrote about a project that you find on the internet. It's called the COVID-Free Toolkit. And it's amazing because in Africa, they faced the pandemic with very, very low resources, with no money, but with a lot of creativity. And they produced, they made objects from the pandemic to face the pandemic, like hand washing systems or system for this social distance with people. Very, very simple, very easy, and so low cost, low tech, with a lot of creativity, and they put everything open source on the web, so the best practices can be shared, and that's the deep meaning of design for me. And instead, the design is European, American design, even at the university, at the school. During the lockdown, they produced a lot of very, very silly projects. Let me I really believe, because I've seen a project by students, things totally out of the blue, you know. And design show how weak it is now. I think that we have really to redefine everything, how we teach design, the purposes of design, because we have been unable to face with the pandemic in short terms and to give design answers very effective and very strong. So I think that now we are really fragile from this point of view. We have to rethink everything.
And Christy, and what do you think about it?
Well, here in Peru, I think we've been always fragile. We still are struggling with trying to fight COVID. Well, it's been all around affected, and for us, well, I think globally, everybody, COVID came, the pandemic, with our underpants down, as they say. That it surprised us, but for us, the government and our country, we realized that we're not prepared, and our health system, it's not even fragile. It's like it was almost inexistent. The main tragedy for us still is the incapacity of our social and health system to support and try to give health or treat the people that are now still getting sick and contagious. So this, it's like really, it's still being really tough. We still have Sundays being partially locked down. Our kids and elder people can't go out. We are still like fighting it. And all the sectors have been affected. For us, as in Brazil, we are people who love to dance and touch each other and kiss ourselves, and the people can't, you know, that's another fragile thing, which is education, because people don't want to follow instructions or orders or use the mask or all the things that we are struggling with. But in the other hand, like where the people I can have contact or know, like say artisans or people that live in fragile places that we consider as the highlands, where they don't have always electricity or access to water, there is less COVID there. So they are afraid to come down to cities, like as they are now near, there's no tourism now. They don't have to go to the cities or to the main attractions, say, to be in contact with the Westerns. They are in their houses, in those shelters, but they are not producing anymore because they don't have a market where to, as you say, Fabiola, you've lost like the buyers, they've lost the tourism, the market. So they are, like say, doing their quarantine safe in the highlands and still fragile as it's been all their life without access to light, or education has been a problem because you see like the kids that normally went to school, that they had to walk to get to their school, they now have to do it online, but their fragility in the inequity also of wealth in our country, that there's no computers in a regular house in Peru. So the government had to design an educational way to get them through radio learning. So imagine like we are just like so much ahead of time and unprepared to to connect, and it's different from from other countries, which every kid has a cell phone or or a computer in their house. Well, I don't know.
It's fine. I mean, I think we share a lot of ideas here. When I hear Fabiola, I think we are in the same corner. However, I think from this situation, we are going to have a stronger community from a developing one. I think we are not necessarily a fragile community right now. We have always lived in crisis in our countries, right? I mean, in South America, for example, or in Peru. So for us, I think it's kind of really quite easy to work and try to go along with these situations. So maybe we have some kind of something positive here that could help us to create more alternatives and to create better situations to salir, ¿cómo es? To go out from situations like these. That's what I have to say.
Well, this helped me to go to the second question. My second question is related more about design. And talking about our work, many universities in the last years, social design has been a part of the academic curriculum, but never he can go out from the theory. All the projects that I saw was projects made by whites, two blacks. It means, let me explain, was something like I call design for your armchair. I want to feel better with my life, so I design for the people who are suffering. But I don't want to go there. I just want to send by email my design. So, do you think that this situation can help to redefine the role of the social design? Because now, after the storm, we will need to have a lot of things, new point of views, new projects, new concept of city, new concept of street. You don't think that this is the, let's say, the final test, the end of the theories, and the starting of the practical work? What do you think, Fabiola?
But I think that you know me, Julio, I'm not an academic person. I am a go there person. So I think it's really impossible to discuss social design without knowing the places. It's impossible. Like, for example, in Tocantins, I went to make a work there, and some people found it was absurd they didn't have a bathroom. So they built outside of the houses for each family a room with bathroom, sink, and everything. Then after some months, they came back there, and people transformed the bathroom into a chicken room, because for them it was more important to protect the chicken from the animals that could eat them than use a bathroom. So you propose things without knowing the needs, knowing the people, and knowing the place. It's loss of time. I was reading a book, The Harvard Way of Be Happy, and this mega power scientist went to Africa and was amused that kids were studying in so poor conditions and happy, while Harvard students were so stressed. For me, it was kind of, I know that I go to these places. So I think that we as designers have to rethink, as Patricia said, everything and start working for real problems instead of making building problems in our heads that don't exist and trying to solve things that don't solve anything. So try to learn with these people. One of the things that more impact me during the pandemic was how we from the cities lost our autonomy.
Mhm.
Because in these places they know how to make soap, how to make everything themselves. So if everything closes, they have food, they have soap, they have everything. We don't know anything. If the supermarket go down and there is no food anymore, we are lost because we don't know how to supply our basic needs. So we have to relearn with them this knowledge that they kept all these years to try to be at least a little bit more autonomous in a crisis and try to think and solve real problems in the world that are many, 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 instead of creating, oh, we need a new chair, we need a new table. No, we have a lot of to solve.
May I make a short question? Because I think what you mentioned to be in the place is one of the problems of the lockdown, that if you want to make a design in this moment, you are not allowed to go to the place. And we are doing all our conversations in this moment digital. So how to transfer contextual information necessary to make an adequate and context reflexive design, how are we able to make a bridge between this gap of physical, also of exposing yourself to the context to understand what is really needed?
Well, I think that the main thing is that many of us already went and already know the situation. So if someone wants to get inside this field and design for social proposal, just can like talk with people that know the places, know the situation, know the problems. Like Giulio knows that, I know many other designers that went to these places can help and say and give the feedback that we already know. Giulio, we work in this field like more than 20 years, so we had a lot of information and a lot of things to share, no? I think that now in this moment, what we can do is get together and share our knowledge. And after, you can go to the place and really feel and live the situation.
Patrizia.
Well, I think that there is another, I agree completely with Fabiola, the things she said. But what happened in Italy, in Milano, during the pandemic is something very strange. You know, Milano, the university, the design school are considered, were considered the best of the world, but they were unable to solve very small problems, also for Italy. You know, there are horrible objects that has been produced for the pandemic by factory, by industry, and the design as nothing was not able to be effective with this, you know. So that is really amazing. So I agree with you. Who cares to design a new chair? There are millions of chairs, but we are still in the university and in the way we teach design linked to this fake world that is totally over. I think it's over since at least 10 to 15 years, but we are still in this mood, you know? And when we have to face with real problems, we are unable to solve them. So not only going in other countries that are more fragile than us, even here, you know? So that's why I think we have really to rethink how to teach design, to put some main points, the purposes of design. That is, I mean, at the beginning, the design was as a very strong social meaning to create. In the 50s, I remember some theoretician in Italy, no? They said to create functional object, functional product with a very good aesthetic, but affordable for the most part of people. So this was the base of design, a very democratic and social idea. We have lost this idea. I mean, in Italy, at least in Italy, we totally lost it. And the design became something very elite, for elite. Now, I mean, even a chair, it costs 1,000 euros. It doesn't make sense because you produce for just the 7% of people in our countries. I'm not interested in it. So that's why I quit the university. Now I teach again, but only school where this idea of the social approach is there. Not not every school in Italy we can talk about social design. They are still linked to these old ideas. But the Polytechnic of Turin, for instance, is very involved with sustainability, with ecology, with this social approach. And then I agree with you, Fabiola. The students, the designer should go if they think to tools or objects for Africa or other countries. They must go there, of course. They must be really involved in the place. But there is a lot of things to do, and I hope that the young people had this strong commitment in this field. I'm not sure. Knowing my students, I have some doubts, but I hope that maybe in other countries.
But you don't think is it enough to say this is social design and this is not social design? Or did we have to make one step more and to say we have to invent a new terminology who has to do with this function we couldn't do before? I think we are so affected from this marketing design that at all is very difficult to give the importance of our action just with an adjective.
Yeah, you are. I agree totally with you. I mean, because
you use
the
also
concept
design.
of of social is in the world design. It should be inside. But now, if we talk about social design, it means that there is a design that is not social, and it doesn't make sense. But really, yeah, I agree with you. The design is social. For the definition, must be social.
Sergio, che dice? Te veo pensieroso. I see you with a thinking face.
Yeah, well, this is really interesting. I agree with you guys. I think I really don't understand when I hear the word social design, because design is always social. When I work in a house, for example, for a family, this family is a community. So I'm working with a community, right? So it's kind of strange to hear this. So I think it's just a label. It's just a label that it sounds great for young designers or architects. In architecture, we have this idea of participative design, that it's supposed to be a design or architecture that works with communities, but it's always the same, right? So I just prefer to understand design. So I'm a designer, I'm an architect, and I have these resources when I design. For example, money, right? The budget is one important source of information when I start a design, or a house, for example, or a restaurant, because here we have always the lack of money, right? So I think schools and universities are starting to understand this again. There was a teacher a couple of years ago in a university here in Lima, and they started working with a community, a real community, people who really live and have a lot of lacks and problems in their life. So we went there with the students and we start working with them, and that's fine. But this idea of social design or social approach, I have the same approach with a family that are not poor family. So I started thinking about what are we trying to say when we say social design. Are we working with poor people? Is that the idea? With lack of money, or what is? So at the end, I really just consider myself as a designer, an architect. Yeah.
If I may intervene, I think it's precisely, especially in the participatory projects which you are doing, it's a share of knowledge. It's a knowledge about handcraft, for example, or it's a knowledge about local necessities. It's a knowledge of territory, and then there is a kind of maybe scientific knowledge, and then there's a kind of knowledge to communicate or distribute. And I think this is this cohabitation of and valorization of these different knowledges which come together and co-create a project that is maybe the most important fact. And I think, for example, when we said we make civic design, the idea was to make the difference between social and civic in a civic attitude. But now this is also kind of hacked and used in different contexts. So we have to resharpen, and I think it's always you have to precise what you think behind your action. And this label, as you said, is not a guarantee. It's the real attitude behind which explains finally or defines the design action.
If we think a little bit the future, and I think that's the topic of this 24 hours, it's very important we rethink. I'm absolutely agree with Patricia. We rethink the methodology and the tools we bring to make this a better situation. we do it before for any of them, but when we think design, we don't think what we do, we think really all other elements. And how can be this transformation from a liberal industrial society to something who we need to do and we dream to do? And I think this is the point of the discussion we will have today, is what have we to change. I'm absolutely agree with Fabiola about this importance of the context. And so for me, I'm agree with you, is a condition. If you don't go on the place, you cannot make some solution. So I think the critic of any part of the design is not enough clear, is not enough active. And that's one point to go over this yet situation.
Well, and thank you, Rudy, for introducing the last question. My last question is, yes, we criticize a lot the concept of make theory and not practice. So, how do you think we can do to cross this line, to help the people cross the line, to convert the design in something like a tool for help, a tool for development, a tool for happiness? What, I don't ask you, I don't know in English, ricetta, non so come si dice ricetta. I don't know the recipes. I don't want to have a perfect formula. But in your point of view, what is the system? What are the tools who can help cross this line? I give you an example. In the middle of pandemic in Milano, the city of Milano asked the design community, please, we need new bus stations, new cinema entrance, new entrance from the school, new rooms for the school. And this was published in the end of March. And in this moment, they have no one result, because the design community have no answer to this request. So it means that the design community needs to be stimulated. I was the only idiot who answered with the university I work, and they say, let's do a project for this request. But the request was absolutely realized underground, and no one in the design association is talking anymore. I have spent 1 minute to talk about that. So how do you think, each one of you in your own reality, we can help to people? What kind of tools we can have to spread our ideas? Because I must tell you, I am a little bit sad. I am a little bit, come dice, annoiato?
Annoyed.
Bored.
Annoyed.
Bored.
Bored. I am boring to be alone, to find people all over the world like Sherlock Holmes looking with a big lens. So Fabiola, do you have any suggestion?
Yeah, luckily, I am happy now that I am in Brazil and not in Italy now. For the sometimes the other way around, but here in Brazil was amazing how people react. For example, design studios with researchers and university got together to build a
respirador, como se dice questo?
The machine for breath.
Yeah,
Breath
you know that the breath machine were super expensive, and US bought everything, so intercept the machines that were coming to Brazil and get to US. So they built this project in like a month, very cheap and easy to do one, and the industries that were closed, like car industries and everything, start building these machines for the hospitals and so on, many other actions. So it was really nice. And I think that the clue maybe is in what Patricia said. Design was something. It was a way of solving problems, real problems, and make people's life better. When I studied, the main thing was that. And then we lost in the middle of the way. For example, what you said about the Italian government, it's not a request, it's a need. It's to answer not a request, but a need, a real need. So we stop working in real needs and start inventing needs to be solved. So if we can come back and start working real needs and try to make people, because I think that the main thing is money, because we do need to survive too as designers. And we working in design for communities and everything, and many of the times we don't get any money. So the money of design is held in this part of when you design chairs and tables for fancy people. Then you get money and you get rich. And people that solve real problems in communities, in hospitals, in, I don't know, in bus stops, or other real needs, don't get neither one half of this money. So I think it's about rethink the whole system and how things are spread. Yeah, man, my English is something now. Sorry, but
it's clear.
I have everything in mind, but I have to. Well, I don't clear what I'm trying to say, but I think that it's about to rethink everything, the whole system, because it's impossible for us to make design for real needs, for people who need, and to returning to that point, to respond to real needs, you have to see what the real needs are. If not, you do as Julie was saying, white design for black people or rich design for poor people. So we have to really know the needs to solve the problems. So I think it's about how to change this whole system.
Okay, but because we have no, when we talk about change the system, it's always quite complicated. But do you have any, Patricia, you have any small suggestion for the people who are hearing us, who want to join this beautiful
I want to say something about what you said. When the local government of Milano during the lockdown asked the design community to give ideas, that's not a serious approach. I mean, because they consider the design community as a group of creative people, artists, that can give ideas. That's totally wrong. Not because they ask ideas for free, not only for that, but because they should have built a team of consultants of design and to face the problem, not just sending sketches, ideas. a fashion approach, typical of Milan now. Design is something different. So that's why no one answered. I agree with this. Because the design, I mean, to be really effective, must be considered by the politician something that can really help to change things and to help also people in this situation, but not only everything. It happened many times before in Milano, even with the urban furniture. Okay, they ask designer, give ideas, but it's not like to design a chair or for your house. I mean, if you have to design something for the city, it's a different approach, no? It can't be approach like an artistic expression and so on. So I think that our mistake, I'm talking about Italian designers, in my generation, has been one of the big mistakes, has been to consider ourselves able to change things only doing our profession, to be good designers, good architects, not to be involved with politicians, with politics. And instead, the result is that we can do that only working for companies, for the private profits. But we didn't, we have not been able to be really strong, really effective in changing things in a higher scale. I mean, with the city, with the urban environment, we didn't succeed with this. So I think that also the school, the way we teach design must change, but also we have to create a stronger link with the politics. Otherwise, we don't change the world. We just change the chair factories or fashion factories. And there are a lot of students. Another problem is that the mentality, there are still students that want to study design because they have in mind Philip Stark or other designer like that. They want to, I ask them, what do you want from your life? What is your wishes? And the answer are really like, I want to be famous. I want to be rich. I mean, okay, I want to be happy. There is no one in the world that say, I want to be poor, unhappy, and totally unknown, you know. It's so stupid, silly answers, no? But if they still have this idea, and I'm very, really bad with this kind of students, to say things that I can't repeat now in the conference. Say, okay, go away, go somewhere else. I don't want to even talk to you. Because, I mean, if they still have this idea, there's something wrong in our society.
Sergio, Christy, you know, when Patricia has talked about the involvement with the politician, I think in Peru you have already some experience to talk with the minister and talk with, the relation is much closer than in Italy, that the power is very, very far away from us. I never forget our lecture that we did together, Christy, in Lima, with the minister assisting. Do you think in Peru there is more easy to reach the power to our discussion, your discussion of?
I think that here, like say in terms of what ministries and government has been dealing with, it's been just to survive, and design for them is not something that it's a necessity, or like say Ministry of Culture, like there is a lot of things that they haven't not even like yet proposed or look for help, because there have been like previous problems that they're to solve. But then I just wanted to say about what Patricia said about being a teacher, which I also teach. I think we have to like keep on something for social design, as we now label it, because we've been doing it, Julio, for like 15 years ago. Our work is in the fields with the artisans, and collaborative, and it's co-design for somebody to improve their way of their income, you know, or their way to be, you know. But something like I think maybe Western's lack is generally, I think it's empathy and sensitivity with for others, because now, like say in textiles or fashion, like who needs one more garment? Who needs to buy one more T-shirt? For God's sake, like everybody, we're full of chairs and clothes and everything in our houses. And one of the things that happened to me personally with this social project that I did like almost 10 years ago, like after 5 years, I realized that it was social. It was getting people in the communities a better income, everything, you know, under a project which you feel like it was succeeding as a social project. But then there was the market that me as a designer had to look and market the project for people to keep on consuming. And then there was a question myself, like, am I on the right path? Because I still have to push people to buy, and I still have to, and it's a social project, and it was yarn made of 100% natural paca, and it was hand spun yarn. It was zero impact in the earth. You know, everything was going okay, but then you have to keep on forcing and being in the market of how the trade shows work, how things and the fashion speeds away. And then now I can tell you something that I really think it's a very good thing happening in Lima, the capital. Like a lot of designers which never do social design now, they can't do like say night gowns because nobody's going out anywhere, or nobody's using a huge earring or hat or whatever, which now it's useless. uh, this is a project of a colleague that she has stopped designing garments or her brand. She has now leading a project which is a marketplace for like local markets, like local farmers with designers. So this is like a marketplace in the street, and it goes all around the city. And the people who sell tomatoes are sharing their space with people who do pottery or who do textiles, which this I found really interesting in how now we have to change the way we present, or we have been separating so much, because now the way of that we sell or we present our projects or products, because now a bunch of tomatoes or organic food is much more luxury than a piece of jewel, because we need to eat, we need to have space, a soap made by hand, or shampoo, or whatever we need that has been done. It's in the same, it should be in the same way, not only how it's been produced, but how we offered it. What about like malls? What about marketplace? Those are like in the past, but they are still there. What's going to happen with all these big, huge spaces consuming air conditioning, so people are comfortable buying these beautiful pieces? You know, it's all about not only government, us designers, and the public consumers, which we are also.
So thank you. I don't know how we are with the time. because we are out of time, probably. Okay.
We are perfect. We have some time.
Okay.
Because the person who come after you is has a problem, so you have time.
He's in the restaurant. I want to say something about what everybody was talking. In my point of view, if you want to make design and make your dreams reality, let's say, you must do everything. We have no limit. Fabiola knows better than you what I did for do design project. It is a moment that you need to jump in or jump out. And in this moment, you are the only one. There is no others who can help. You need to face the problem. And I don't want to describe my life, but I have many moments where I did crazy things, really crazy things, to make possible that the project was done. I talked in the Camera of Deputies in Brazil. But I'm talking, I'm a beginner. I was presenting my idea in Brasilia. I was talking in Cairo in the mosque of El Azhar, the most important Muslim study center, to be allowed to work with the Prophet's words. But nobody tell me, or nobody helped me to do that. I went there and I did. There is a critique that I do also to myself, because also myself sometimes, I'm not Indiana Jones, but many people of our domain, they are waiting that somebody else do the
hard work
and job, the heavy job. It's very easy to arrive to a design workshop when the design work is ready. Completely different when you need to convince people, you need to talk. I have a very short story just to explain how long, how deep we can go with design. Many years ago, in the early 2000s, I was invited in Brazil to work in the border between Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. And the organization of the Dam of Itapu, a big dam, was interested to create new line of. So Mercosur is the market, the international market between countries in the South of America. They help us. So basically, because of the law, of the new law, the Argentinian can export cars. Brazil and Argentina can export, I don't know, jelly to Paraguay, but the artisan cannot cross with their goods on this border. And the border was a bridge, two bridges. One is both called the Friendship Bridge. So we decided to do the workshop in Brazil, and we had the problem to bring Argentinian and Paraguayan without passport. So I had a meeting with the police of the three countries, and they say we will not allow to cross the border without any document. So I say, why we cannot, like in the Brazilian carnival, there is, when you want to go safe, you buy a t-shirt. It's called abada, I think.
Yeah.
And that is works like your ID. So we define the ID was this t-shirt. And Fabiola get one, I think, this t-shirt. So we decided that 200 artisans was allowed to cross the border without control, thanks because they were wearing this t-shirt. And when I went to the printer of the t-shirt, the guy say, but we will print only 200. And I say, no, print whatever. So the day after, the police of the border police of the three countries was facing thousands of people wearing our design t-shirt, crossing the border from one place to another without being stopped. So this is extreme, but design needs to return to the original, and you cannot make design without take risk, without being involved. This is my
I think it fits very well with our friends from Caracas who spoke, and Medellin who spoke about the designing the impossible, because we have so many proofs that it's possible and it can be and can become possible. And this is maybe in the sense of progettazione, this capacity to project and to make it real by this projection, which becomes physical. And I think this way of manifestation is one of the strongest forces. And I want to quote in the same moment the young designer from Ghana who said, we have to redesign the future. So she's projecting her to the future and she's saying, I have to redesign it. So it's a kind of time shift on saying that we have to appropriate the future, which is maybe already written, but we have to rewrite it now and here. And I think this is concerning developing, non-developing, who's the fragile. In this moment, I think the developing and fragile countries are more those who are in a crisis, and this is not because of, this is maybe COVID, but it's more because their model is in crisis. The old model is in crisis, and this is also, which we have said, a chance. And I see what you are doing is precisely bridging into this gap to redefine this dominant curriculum and this dominant way of designing us and our realities. And I think this is a very, very strong element, and something you haven't spoken about, but I know from your project that one of the aims is also to make a project, but then to regain to give the autonomy to the context where you have been working. So it's not a kind of depending relation, but it's more a kind of empowerment to be to have an autonomous business after that. And I think this is also often these relations are dependencies relations. So one has the knowledge, and then the other is part of the game, but more in the sense of producer and not in the sense of autonomous creator. And I think this is also another element. I don't know if you want to comment or make a last round.
Fabiola, any comment of that?
Yeah, but I agree with everything. I know Julio's work, and it's more or less how we work to giving autonomies to the people, making them recognize their power and their importance, cultural importance. And Julio, I have to say, have this amazing skill of convincing people, important people, that the project is important. And no, all of us have this skill. He has a really, really high level of this skill, and it helps a lot things to happen. And I think that we need more people like Julio that can have this power of convincement, especially convincement politicians that the work is important. And I had many opportunities to work with him and realize how big he can transform this work that many times are small. He can transform it in a huge that involves the whole country and a lot of people. It's really amazing.
It's very interesting because this is an important design skill. Not everyone has it and has to have it, but it's interesting to include it in the curriculum. To say that this kind of, and we have other partners who spoke about this, these architects, about the organizational architecture, which you have to build around, in this case, around buildings, but also around projects. Is this relational and organizational architecture to make them happen, but also persist and continue. And I think this is very interesting that you bring this in as a skill.
Yeah, it is.
If I can add something, Giulio, I think that all of us worked on many interesting projects. You have this capacity, as Fabiola said, that is very, very important. But we are sometimes more interested in doing new projects, and we feel that the work of communicate the project we have done is a waste of time. I mean, when they ask me, okay, come for a lecture and to tell us all the project you did of empowerment in Asia or in Africa, sometimes I say, oh, I find it boring because, you know, but instead it's very, very important to communicate, have the possibility to share our project, not only among us, because we are a community, but out of this community, because it's very, very, I think, important. When I force myself and I do it, and I go for a lecture in other university, I see that the students are very, very interested. They see in this project something more important than what they are doing or studying in this moment. So, for instance, when we went to Geneva, you remember a few years ago now, all the projects that we discussed were so interesting, you know, that we should really spend time to communicate all this project more and more, just to make things changing a little bit. It helps, I think.
So right, this event tries to do this, to create this always and always these kind of communities. And I think it's, but documentation, we have the same problem, is such an important aspect to share best practices. And also it gives value, because often we need references. If we want to convince politicians or other stakeholders. We need the examples to justify and legitimize our approaches and our progresses. So this is an important role of these communities like we are, that we help each other to be reference for the other.
Yeah, we should create at least a common tool to put together all these projects.
Yeah.
You know?
We take this as a proposal for you.
This is I'm very pragmatic in my approach.
This is
I
for
think
me.
Now we need it.
This is one of the questions I would ask at Giulio, is his connection with UNO, with an international organization, who is for me also one of the points of possibilities, because we see also give some limits of national connection. I think if we will change this world, we have also to work together on other points of connection, of relation in between countries, and we really see that this system of competition, who is every time present in many projects in between countries, makes that this kind of intervention on important points don't exist. We cannot ask at Madagascar to resolve our own problem. So how can we also enforce a little bit this international organization to say that we need design for change?
This is a big question, because international organizations are made by people, and the old staff are involved with the old way to do international cooperation, and not many of them want to take a risk to take a new methodology, because it's a risk. Instead to make a project, I do a training. So training is like the Red Cross, everybody likes. Once the training is end, I did my job, I can return home. But be involved in a creative project for many of the international organizations is cross an unknown border. After they don't know, but they feel fun. So they love to talk about, but I think they are very concerned to do it for real. We say in Italy that is like a teenager talking about sex. That everybody talk and nobody have name. So I believe that the new generation of this international organization staff will bring this modernity and this changing. Because what is important is that the countries is asking this kind of project. When I did the project in Madagascar, Tanzania asked the same project. And some remote guy from Geneva called me and say, hey, the Tanzanian is asking for a project like Madagascar, and we don't know how to do it. You understand? It's a way of change, but also is a way of opportunities.
Sure.
In my point of because I love this word from a friend yesterday. He told me, he said, I just waiting the next news in the newspaper will be the arrival of the Martians, because this year everything happened. So I only wake up in the morning to see where is the spaceship based, because the rest is already happened. So we cross the border of the future somehow. So I think, I don't want to say thanks, but because of the pandemic, after the pandemic, will be much easier to talk about this new world. I don't know, en Perú, ¿qué dicen?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you, Julio. I think there's a sort of magic word among our conversation. For me, it's tradition. When I follow my traditions, for example, local constructive techniques, when I go and work in Cusco, for example, or in the north part of Peru, working with soil and local materials, I understand some words like collective, ecology, for example, and a lot of really positive words, right? So collaborative, for example, I can find that word within tradition, right? Or so in one hand, I have this idea of reusing that word. On the other hand, I think we must create a new tradition for design, right? Design, I think, can't go on anymore if we think just in designers or architects. We have to think in building up teams. And in those teams, we will find engineers and communicators and a lot of people that can help to solve and face the problem, as you say. So I think tradition could be a good word for us.
Well, Rudy,
yes.
I'm very surprised to see your real name under your face.
Me too. Rodolfo.
It is.
So
I have really to thank you for this long conversation at all. It was very interesting, and I hope to see you all soon.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We go over to the next program.
Of course. So thank you to my guests. Thank you, Fabiola.
Thank you, Giulio.
Bye-bye.
Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And so we keep in touch, and let's wait for the Martians.
Yeah.
Let's wait.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Venusians, maybe.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Bye.
Say hello to Vera.
Ciao, Giulio.
Ciao.
Ciao.
¿Se entendió bien lo que dije o no?
Sí.
Tú también, monstruo, ¿ah?
Sí.
Me escribió Jimmy, se
Sí.
ven lindos.
Ay, qué...
Donc, nous poursuivons dans 5 minutes avec un petit changement dans le programme, puisque Miguel Robles Duran et Gabriela sont dans des difficultés à New York et que nous allons discuter à présent avec les étudiants de l'école d'Amiens. Merci.